Good morning. If everybody could please have their seats. If everybody could please take their seats. I want to ask everyone to have patience this morning. As you know, we have to go through the security perimeter there. And so people are going to be coming in as we get started here. But I did want to go ahead and take this time so we can get moving. I'm Mark Vesey. I'm the chair of the First Committee representing the United States of America. And I call the meeting of the General Committee on Political Affairs and Security to order. Colleagues, you'll see that there has been an agenda that has been distributed. And could I please invite you to adopt the agenda? Are there any objections? If no, the agenda is adopted. Does anyone wish to speak against the draft?
No.
Distinguished colleagues, it's my honor to call this meeting of the General Committee on the Political Affairs and Security to order. This annual session is occurring at a consequential moment for the security of the OSCE region. The decision made by participating states over the coming months will help determine not only the outcome of Russia's illegal and brutal war against Ukraine, but also the future of the principles that have underpinned peace and stability in Europe for decades. For more than 4 years, longer than the duration of World War I, Ukraine has defended itself against Russia's brutal and unprovoked aggression. The Ukrainian people continue to demonstrate extraordinary courage and resilience. We've also seen Russia demonstrate a willingness to absorb staggering losses at cost in pursuit of its objectives. That reality should underline that we can't wait for events to resolve themselves. It is part of the work of this committee to ensure that we are signaling and working in our respective parliamentary bodies to provide Ukraine all the material, financial resources, and all the political backing it needs to continue the shift in momentum on the battlefield we've all witnessed. Peace remains our objective. The reality is that we have a lot of work that we have to do here, and Ukraine needs our help. They need our financial resources. They're going to need everything possible in order for us to maintain peace. But peace must be durable. A pause in the fighting that merely allows aggression to regroup and return anew is not a lasting peace. A true end to this war must see Ukraine provided with the security, sovereignty, and means of self-defense to prevent further aggression. Until that moment, we must continue the steady march of security assistance, helping Ukraine build up its industrial capacity, economic resilience, and its energy security. And here, let me make a point on energy security, a critical element of national security that provides the freedom of choice to policymakers. Energy security gives the freedom to make foreign policy and national security decisions based on their values and interests and not dependent on coercion. Over the past several years, Europe has taken critical steps to reduce its reliance on Russian energy and is strengthening both its security and its strategic autonomy. That progress should continue, and I encourage our friends from across the OSCE to follow through on their commitments to diversify energy sources and strengthen energy resilience and ensure that no nation is forced to choose between energy needs and its principles. I am proud to say that Texas LNG, my home state in the United States, has greatly contributed to keeping the lights on in Ukraine during Russia's long and relentless winter bombardments. Such a blatant act of war aggression reminds us why the principles of Helsinki Final Act remain relevant today as they were 50 years ago. Sovereignty and territorial integrity matter. Borders cannot be changed by force. These are foundational principles of international security. We must apply those principles consistently, whether we're discussing Ukraine, the South Caucasus, the Balkans, or Greenland. The message should be the same. We are at our strongest when we defend these foundational principles uniformly and weakest when we treat them as negotiable. Before turning to our work today, I also want to acknowledge the excellent and cooperation among the officers of this committee. It has been a privilege for me to serve along such wonderful people. Ms. Javrosima Pajovic, who has become a good friend of mine, and our rapporteur, Mr. Tobias Winkler. Together, we have worked to ensure that this committee remains active and responsive and forward-looking in addressing the evolving security challenges facing the OSCE region. Over the past year, our committee officers have actively contributed to important security discussions through participation in different field visits, conferences, and parliamentary dialogues, as well as through public statements on pressing issues affecting our region. In doing so, we have sought to ensure that this committee continues to provide meaningful parliamentary input at a time when principled leadership and sustained dialogue are needed more than ever. I also want to express sincere appreciation to our rapporteur, Mr. Tobias Winkler, for his diligent work in preparing the report and draft resolution before us. His work truly does reflect the complexity and urgency of the security challenges that we face, while offering important recommendations for parliamentary action. I look forward to our discussion of these documents together in the course of this session. And for me personally, this meeting carries significance. This will be my final annual session as a member of the OSCE PA. It has been one of my greatest privileges of my congressional service to work alongside colleagues across the OSCE region. And no matter where you go, people really do want the same basic things. They want security for their families, sovereignty for their countries, and the ability to determine their own future. It has been an honor to defend those key values with you, and I'm grateful for the many friendships that I have formed out of my, which will be 14 years in Congress when I close out my career. I can tell you that being a part of this body has been so meaningful to me and so special to me, and it's just been amazing to get to know and maintain close relationships with so many of you over the years. I look forward to long-term friendships. Thank you. Thank you very much. Also, one of my good friends that you will hear and continue to get to know is Joe Wilson, Congressman from South Carolina. Joe Wilson, I can tell you, he is a committed transatlantist. He is a tireless advocate for the alliance between the United States and Europe, and he takes this very seriously. And I'm proud to support my friend and colleague as the next chair of the General Committee of Political Affairs and Security. And if elected, I can tell you that he is going to provide strong leadership and continue the committee's tradition of being able to move forward and get things done. And so I look forward to that as well. And thank you to each and every one of you. And that concludes my opening remarks. And again, we really do look forward to the discussions and the work ahead. I thank you, and I now declare the meeting open. The committee is scheduled to have 4 meetings during the session. Our first task will be to debate the report by our rapporteur, Mr. Tobias Winkler, entitled International Law and Shared Principles, Foundations for Security and Cooperation in the OSCE Area. We will also consider amendments of his draft resolution. Time permitting, we will start this process today. We have 19 amendments tabled to the draft resolution, which are available outside of the room, on the documents table, and on the app. In addition, this committee has been tasked by the Standing Committee to debate and consider 3 supplementary items covering the following issues: countering the online radicalization of youth, as proposed by Mr. Kamil Aden of Turkey; strengthening a comprehensive, cooperative, and people-centered approach to combating drug trafficking and drug use and fighting organized crime and all forms of mafia in the OSCE area, opposed by Mr. Eugenio Zofili from Italy, and Ukraine as an indispensable security provider, proposed by Senator Roger Wicker of the United States of America. We will consider the supplementary items when our main business on the draft resolution is concluded. Delegates are kindly requested to keep their headsets away from the microphone. Please keep your headsets away from the microphone. Headsets placed too close to the microphones can cause a very high-pitched audio feedback, which is uncomfortable and disruptive for everybody in the room, including their interpreters and the participants. And I want to thank you ahead of time for your cooperation in that area. Also, as it goes for the arrangement of the election of committee officers, may I remind colleagues that the election of committee officers for the next annual session of the Assembly will take place during the committee's final session, which is likely to take place on Tuesday morning. I've been asked to put before the committee a proposal by the Secretariat for a change to the deadline for candidate nominations. This is to allow sufficient time for the arrangements for the election to be made ahead of our meeting on Tuesday. The same proposal is being put to all general committees. Under Rule 36, Paragraph 5, the Secretariat would like to ask the committee to agree that the deadline for nominations for the committee officers shall be 6 p.m. on Monday, July the 6th. This is to allow sufficient time for the arrangement for elections to be made ahead of our meeting on Tuesday morning. Are there any objections? If no, the proposal is adopted. As for the presentation of draft resolution and report by our rapporteur, Mr. Tobias Winkler, I would now like to welcome to the floor Mr. Tobias Winkler to present his report and draft resolution to the committee. It would assist me greatly if any member wishing to speak during the debate could enter his or her name in the register as early in the debate as possible, Mr. Winkler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, dear Mark, dear colleagues, good morning. Before turning to the substance of my report and draft resolution, I would like to begin by expressing my sincere appreciation to all members of this committee, to our chair and vice chair, as well as to our staff members for their active engagement, excellent cooperation over the past year. In a period marked by significant and rapidly evolving security challenges across the OSCE area, the work of this committee has remained both highly relevant and deeply substantive. Through our discussions, participation in assembly activities, field visits, and various engagements throughout the year, we have continued to contribute meaningfully to important debates on peace, security, and cooperation in our region. I'm particularly grateful for the constructive exchanges and collegial spirit that have characterized our work. They have greatly informed the preparation of both this report and the draft resolution before you today. We are working in a time of profound uncertainty where major developments affecting security in the OSCE area unfold almost daily. This makes any assessment by definition a snapshot in a rapidly evolving environment. Unfortunately, this is the third year in a row that I begin with this observation, which in itself is a worrying indication of the persistent instability across our region. But it is precisely this unpredictability that underlines the continued relevance of the OSCE, an organization created to reduce uncertainty, build trust, and bring predictability to international relations through dialogue and agreed principles. The report before you, therefore, does not claim to provide final answers, but rather seeks to capture the current state of play and identify the major trends shaping our security environment. The security order in the OSCE area remains under exceptional strain. The core principles of the Helsinki Final Act continue to be challenged in increasingly dangerous ways. The report and resolution therefore provide both an overview of key threats and a call for stronger, more effective OSCE. At the center of our security landscape remains Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. More than 4 years into the full-scale invasion, the war continues to cause immense human suffering, including the deliberate targeting of civilian and energy infrastructure and the reported abductions of Ukrainian children. Support for Ukraine must remain sustained and multidimensional. Efforts to end the war must be grounded in international law, with Ukraine fully involved in decisions concerning its future. This also requires addressing the imbalance whereby energy revenues continue to sustain Russia's war effort. Strengthening sanctions and tackling circumvention, including shadow fleet activities, must be pursued with greater urgency. This is not only about Ukraine, but about defending the credibility of the rules-based order in the OSCE area. Looking ahead, we must also prepare for the OSCE's potential role in reconstruction, democratic resilience, and civilian protection, including through ceasefire monitoring, confidence building, and election observation when conditions permit. Beyond Ukraine, the report highlights serious concerns regarding developments in Georgia since 2024 parliamentary elections, including democratic backsliding, violence and restrictions on political and civil actors, while reaffirming support for Georgia's sovereignty and territorial integrity. It also draws attention to the growing importance of the Arctic and the High North, where climate change and geopolitical competition risk destabilizing the region. Respect for international law, environmental responsibility and dialogue remain essential. The report further underscores that instability in the Middle East continues to have direct implications for the OSCE area, including through security risk, migration pressures, and economic disruptions, and calls for de-escalation and sustained diplomatic engagement. A key focus of both the report and the resolution is resilience. This includes the protection of critical infrastructure, particularly in the Baltic Sea, as well as resilience against hybrid threats such as cyber operations, disinformation, and election interference, where artificial intelligence acts as a force multiplier. Economic and supply chain resilience are equally important, as vulnerabilities in energy, critical raw materials, and key transport routes can rapidly generate cross-border consequences. Another crucial element is confidence. The weakening of arms control frameworks continues to increase strategic risks and uncertainty. In the absence of effective arms control and confidence-building arrangements, the risk of miscalculation and unintended escalation grows significantly. This calls for renewed efforts on transparency, risk reduction, and disarmament. When it comes to both resilience and strategic stability, the OSCE remains indispensable. Its institutions, field operations, and mechanisms build bridges between states, regions, and political cultures in a way no other institution does. But the effectiveness of the organization ultimately depends on the political will of participating states. Consensus remains possible, but reduced resources and continued uncertainty risk weakening the OSCE precisely when it's most needed. A stronger OSCE is not an abstract goal. It requires concrete political choices. Sustained engagement, readiness to compromise, and adequate, predictable financing for its institutions, field operations, and core activities, including election observation, and the same applies to our Parliamentary Assembly. I would also like to thank colleagues who have submitted amendments to the draft resolution. I appreciate the engagement and thoughtful proposals that have been put forward. They reflect the seriousness with which members of this committee approach the challenges before us. I look therefore forward to discussing these amendments with their sponsors and with all of you during our deliberations, and I hope that through constructive dialogue we can further strengthen this resolution and build broad support around it. And as I see our fellow colleague and Dutch head of delegation, Farah Karimi, in the first row, please let me conclude by expressing my sincere gratitude to our Dutch hosts for their warm hospitality and excellent organization for this meeting. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward for the discussion.
Mr. Winkler, thank you very much. The floor is now open for debate. The time limit for the speeches is 4 minutes. I do want to remind everybody that we have a large number of delegates that would like to speak today, and I may have to reduce the time to accommodate as many people as possible, but we will start off with 4 minutes. The list for the debate closed earlier this morning, but if there are members not registered to speak that are willing to do so, please approach the procedural team at the podium. And our first contribution will be from the gentlelady to my right, Ms. Jarosima Pajovic, the Vice Chair of the committee. And then after her, we're going to be followed by the list of speakers, and that will begin with Mr. Makita Portarai from the Ukraine, and then from Cyprus, Ms. Irene Charmbalaitis.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for your work in this committee. Also, I want to say a big thank you to Tobias for his work on this resolution. It was very touching to read it because it reflects what we are facing nowadays, and it's a very good overview of the situation in the world, and it is pretty much disturbing for all of us who are making decisions about the destinies of our people. And one of the greatest moral principles of my people is this: humanity is to defend others from yourself, and heroism is to defend yourself from others. And it reminds us that the true strength is measured not only by the power, not by the power to destroy, but the discipline to protect. The building across this building that stands across us is a silent witness to what happens when in war people abandon this principle. It reminds us the suffering begins at the moment when humanity is cast aside and violence loses its moral limits. Today, we continue to witness the courage of the Ukrainian people. Like so many through the history, they understood what at stake. Had they taken even a single step back, they will step onto their own graves, their homes, and the cradles of the future generations. That is why those who bear arms must always be mindful of how they treat upon the land, whether they believe they are defending or liberating it. They must remember that every road, every house, every bridge, and every field carries lives, memories, and hopes of the people who belongs there. It is awareness that distinguished warriors and knights from criminals. This principle is that opens the path to peace, justice, and reconciliation. And it is very principles that lies in the heart of the laws of war, which exist not to make war acceptable, but to preserve and prevent war criminals. Preserve common humanity and prevent war crimes. If we measure our actions by that stance, we would start to leave behind the better world and then one we inherit. May we never forget that the peace is built not only by those who defend what is right, but also those who never lose the strength in their humanity. For in the end of our grace, do not measure the battles by the wind, but the humanity that we preserve. And we all, in this very sensitive moment, has to be reminded of all these principles. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. The next person that you will hear from is Mr. Makita Portarai from the Ukraine, followed by Ms. Irene Charmbalaitis.
Thank you. Distinguished colleagues, I would like to turn your attention to one fact that disturbs me during last weeks and even couple of months. I see that Western media are quoting what dictator Putin and his closest personages say, not fully. We in Ukraine see in Western media that Putin demand is only about Donbass. So if he can get Donbass, he will stop the war. It's not truth. Full quoting that was repeated by Putin himself and his press secretary Peskov and other speakers, including Minister of Foreign Affairs Lavrov, always correspond to 2 years conditions of 2024. And full quoting says that they want to get Donbass and Zaporozhye and Kherson. So they are talking about 5 Ukrainian regions. Part of them are not occupied and even never were occupied. So please turn to this attention, colleagues. If there is a ceasefire tomorrow, if war is stopped tomorrow, it doesn't mean that peace will be reached, because long-lasting peace always should be just. And you know, we unfortunately had to create technologies and solutions that we never planned to develop. And we are absolutely open to share our tragic experience with all countries that want to study lessons of Russian war against us. But there is one country, which lesson we study in Ukraine. And this country is Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan, which waited for 30 years to restore its territorial integrity and sovereignty of all Azerbaijani Republic. And only in such conditions long-lasting and just peace can be reached. And believe me, if war is stopped tomorrow, it won't be, and if war is just stopped tomorrow, it won't be peace for Ukraine. And if necessary, we'll wait for years, but we will come back and get our own back. It is condition for long-lasting and just peace. And finalizing, I would like to thank Congressman Mark Wiese for your service here. And on behalf of Ukrainian people, let me say you thank you for friendship and support of Ukraine. It was real honor and pleasure to work with you, Mark, here in OSCE PA. I hope that we will meet again and again in other circumstances, probably more happy. Thank you very much. And thank you, dear Tobias, Mr. Tobias Winkler, for brilliant report with absolutely right stresses and focuses. And a lot of amendments. I would like to thank to authors of all amendments to our resolution of our committee. Some of them should be discussed, some of them, of course, should be supported. But thank you to all who took part in work on this resolution. And first of all, thank again, Mr. Tobias Winkler. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you. The next speaker from Cyprus will be Ms. Irene Charlambides, followed by Mr. Gaya Mamadov from Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Firstly, I want to thank Tobias Winkler for being a brave voice with vision and true leadership. This reflects in his reports and resolutions. Tobias, you are among the ones I will terribly miss Since this is my last presence at OSCPA, I have been assigned to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, so this is a goodbye as well. The crisis concerning Iran reminds us that regional tensions can quickly become global risks. Any threat to freedom of navigation, especially through the Strait of Hormuz, affects trade, energy, security, and economic stability far beyond the region. International waterways become instruments of pressure or blackmail. Freedom of navigation must be protected under international law. Escalation must be avoided through diplomacy. We hope that any agreement concerning Iran will prove sustainable. The objective must not be a temporary pause, but a genuine path towards de-escalation, regional stability, and peace. The Middle East has already endured too many rounds of crisis, with consequences that extend far beyond the region itself. Europe must also draw the right conclusions. Peace can no longer be taken for granted. Across our continent, states are rearming and defense spending is rising. This is a response to real threats, but it also carries danger. Insecurity leads to rearmament. Rearmament fuels suspicion. Suspicion can become an arms race. Europe must therefore become stronger and more autonomous. Autonomy does not mean isolation. It means responsibility. We need defense capabilities, but also diplomacy, secure supply chains, technological sovereignty, and a clearer strategic voice. On technology, Europe must be honest. We have talent and research, but we are behind in artificial intelligence, cloud infrastructure, and major digital platforms. We regulate, but we do not build fast enough. We speak of sovereignty, yet we still depend heavily on technologies designed elsewhere. This is not only an economic weakness, it is a strategic vulnerability. At the same time, the transatlantic bond remains essential. At a time when challenges are increasingly global, Europe and the United States must continue to stand together. Of course, there will be differences, but differences must be discussed, managed, and resolved through dialogue. The Helsinki principles were not agreed spontaneously or all at once. They were the result of difficult negotiations, compromise, and a shared understanding that cooperation was necessary. This is the spirit we must preserve today. We should not pretend that there are no points of friction between Europe and the United States. There are differences on trade, on technology, regulation, on energy choices, and sometimes on how best to respond to international crises. But these differences should not weaken the transatlantic relationship. On the contrary, they should remind us why permanent dialogue, mutual respect, and political maturity are so necessary. And of course, we may still debate whether to call it soccer or football, although of course it is football. But what matters is that we continue to play the game together. The OSCE area needs a stronger Europe and a stronger transatlantic partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker from Azerbaijan will be Mr. Gaya Mamadov, followed by North Macedonia, Ms. Monika Zikova.
Thank you, Chairperson, dear colleagues. We warmly welcome this year's session topic. I also thank the rapporteur for the excellent report he has prepared. To place international law at the center of our work is both timely and necessary. Yet we must be honest with ourselves. The international order we are speaking of today is far from being genuinely law-based. Rules exist in abundance. What is lacking is their equal application. The deepest cause of this problem is not the shortage of norms. It is inconsistency, the selective application of law, the double standards under which the same illegal act condemned in one place and tolerated in another, and the blatant disregard for the sovereign equality of states. What we uphold for one, we must uphold for all. Otherwise, we will erode the very order we claim to defend. For this reason, sovereignty and sovereign equality of states must remain our cardinal principles, not a convenience invoked selectively, but a constant that binds us equally, at all times and without exception. Colleagues, this principle does not stop at the edge of the physical world. It extends with growing urgency into cyberspace. International law applies online as it does offline, and digital sovereignty must be respected no less than sovereignty in the physical domain. Here, Azerbaijan pursues a comprehensive and responsible approach to information technologies, including artificial intelligence, one that addresses in balance three imperatives at once: security, prosperity, and human rights. We treat these not as competing elements, but as mutually reinforcing. This is reflected in our integrated interagency model at home. Azerbaijan has established a high-level task force, the Digital Development Council, chaired by our first Vice President, to coordinate national policy on digital development, including responsible use of artificial intelligence. We consider this whole-of-government coordination as a best practice that promotes stability and prosperity. Chairperson, a rules-based order worth of the name will rest not on selective virtue, but on consistency and on unwavering respect for the sovereignty of every state, both in the physical domain and in the digital one. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker that you will hear from will be from North Macedonia, Ms. Monika Zikova, followed by Mr. Nicholas Samharadze from Georgia.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, allow me to begin by thanking Mr. Tobias for his comprehensive report and balanced draft resolution. Both documents provide a timely assessment of the increasingly complex security environment facing the OSCE area and reaffirm the enduring relevance of the Helsinki Final Act at the cornerstone of our common security. The rules-based international order can only survive if international law is respected consistently and without any exceptions. The principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, peaceful settlement of disputes, and respect of human rights are not abstract ideals. They are the very foundations of stability, especially for countries like mine, like North Macedonia. My country condemns without reservation the Russian Federation's war of aggression against Ukraine. This is not an abstract legal violation far from our borders. It is, as the report rightly says, a direct assault on the principles that this assembly exists to defend. This war remains the grave threat to European security, causing human suffering while undermining the very principles upon which the OSCE was established. A just and lasting peace can only be achieved in full accordance with the international law. At the same time, today's security challenges extend well beyond conventional military threats. Hybrid attacks, cyber operations, foreign information manipulation, attacks of critical infrastructure have become integral components of modern conflict. My country, North Macedonia, have invested considerably in improving cybersecurity, protecting critical infrastructure, and countering disinformation through closer cooperation between state institutions, civil society, and international partners. Strengthening protection against hybrid threats, promoting responsible governance of artificial intelligence,
Reinforcing confidence-building measures are priorities particularly relevant as technological developments increasingly shape both our democratic processes and our collective security. North Macedonia remains firmly committed to the Helsinki Principles and to the OSCE comprehensive concept of security. We chaired the OSCE in 2023, hosted the Ministerial Council and OSCPA Bureau in Skopje, and the OSCE mission to Skopje continues to work with institutions on democratic governance, rule of law, and inclusive dialogue to this day. So we know firsthand what this organization can deliver when participating states invest in it politically and financially. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The next speaker from Georgia is Mr. Nicholas Samploradze, followed by Ms. Maria Asen Svensrud from Norway.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, let me thank the rapporteur for his report and for including the occupation of Georgian territories by the Russian Federation into the report, as we agreed in Vienna. This is very important because Georgia has been suffering from occupation for the last 30 years. And in this context, we also want to express our strongest condemnation of the so-called Treaty on Deepening Allied Interaction concluded between the Russian Federation and so-called South Ossetia in May this year. This document constitutes a flagrant violation of international law and represents Moscow's yet another desperate attempt to entrench the occupation and advance the de facto annexation of territories that are internationally recognized as integral part of Georgia. I hereby remind the international community, including the Russian Federation, that any so-called treaty, agreement, or the other act concluded by the self-proclaimed authorities of the occupied regions is and will inherently be declared null and void. I want to also turn your attention to another point in the report which concerns the Moscow mechanism. I want to inform the committee that invocation or invoking of Moscow mechanism and its findings were not supported by the majority of the OSCE participating states, including the United States, France, Spain, Italy, and others. I will not name all of them, but 34 member states did not support and did not approve this finding. So this is an important, very important fact to note. Furthermore, the report that was drafted by one single expert in 72 hours contains many factual inconsistencies and also allegations. The expert herself recognized that she did not have enough time to have evidence on all the allegations. Therefore, when the report was discussed at the Permanent Council at the OSCE, Georgian government has provided also its position towards the report. Therefore, we cannot take the report as an ultimate truth because, as I mentioned, the expert herself recognized that she could not collect enough evidence for the report. There are, of course, certain recommendations that we agree with, and some of these recommendations have already been implemented. But again, I wanted to flag that this report has certain flaws when it comes to factual correctness. Thank you very much, and we look forward to continued debate on this subject.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker from Norway is Ms. Maria Asen Svensrud, followed by, from Kyrgyzstan, Mr. Merdibek Aliyev.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to comment on our reporter, Tobias Winkler, for an excellent resolution. It provides a clear assessment of challenges facing the OC region and offers a strong basis for continued parliamentary cooperation. I would like to highlight 3 points of particular importance. First, I welcome strong the emphasis on Ukraine. At a time when Ukraine is facing a highly precarious situation with continued Russian aggression, causing immense human suffering and place enormous pressure on the country's resilience, the embassy support must continue to remain unwavering. Continued political, military and economic humanitarian assistance is essential not only for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, but also for defense on democracy and the rule-based international order. Secondly, I appreciate the resolution's focus on Moldova. As a country facing considerable security challenges and external pressure, Moldova deserves sustained international attention and support. The Norwegian government has supported Moldova through assistance for humanitarian needs, energy security and reform efforts. Strengthening democratic institutions' resilience and its European aspirations is crucial, both for Moldova itself and for the stability of the wider region. Thirdly, I strongly welcome the resolution's emphasis on the protection of critical infrastructure. Recent years have demonstrated how vulnerable our societies can be to sabotage, cyber attacks and other hybrid threats. This is particularly evident at sea, when undersea cables and pipelines are vital for energy security and communication. For Norway, protecting critical undersea infrastructure is therefore an important priority. Strengthening the security and resilience of critical infrastructure must remain a priority for our collective security. Overall, this is a balanced, relevant and forward-looking resolution. I fully support the conclusions and thank Tobias Winkler for his excellent work. Thank you.
Thank you. From Kyrgyzstan, we're going to have Mr. Merdebek Aliyev, followed by Mr. Greg Murphy from the United States.
Уважаемый председатель, уважаемые члены делегации, позвольте выразить признательность за возможность выступить на заседании Общего комитета по политическим вопросам и безопасности. Парламентская ассамблея ОБСЕ играет большую роль в развитии межпарламентской дипломатии, выступая важной платформой для конструктивного диалога, обмена законодательным опытом и укрепления взаимопонимания между парламентами государств-участников. Ее деятельность способствует формированию атмосферы доверия и предсказуемости в межгосударственных отношениях, основанных на принципах сотрудничества и уважения. Для Кыргызской Республики участие в работе Ассамблеи рассматривается как значимый вклад в развитие межпарламентского диалога и укрепление доверия между государствами-участниками ОБСЕ. В этом контексте последовательное развитие внутриполитической системы и укрепление государственных институтов служит основой для конструктивного международного взаимодействия. В последние годы Кыргызская Республика решительно укрепляет политическую стабильность и государственные институты. На сегодняшний день политический процесс развивается в рамках демократических процедур и правовых норм. Особо хотел бы отметить, что после парламентских выборов, состоявшихся в ноябре 2025 года, парламент Кыргызской Республики сформирован и осуществляет свою деятельность в полном объеме. Парламент активно выполняет законодательные, представительские и контрольные функции. обеспечивая устойчивое развитие страны и поступательное проведение реформ. В этой связи Кыргызская республика выражает признательность Парламентской ассамблее ОБСЕ за направление наблюдательной миссии на парламентские выборы 2025 года. Мы рассматриваем это как важный вклад в укрепление доверия к демократическим институтам в нашей стране. Кыргызская республика продолжает демонстрировать положительную динамику социально-экономического развития. Проводимая реформа направлена на повышение инвестиционной привлекательности, развитие инфраструктуры, цифровизацию государственных услуг и поддержку предпринимательства. Большое внимание уделяется развитию энергетического сектора, транспортной связанности, экономики, зеленой, и усилия способствуют укреплению макроэкономической стабильности и созданию новых возможностей для устойчивого роста. Особо хотел бы отметить международное достижение Кыргызской республики. Избрание непостоянным членом Совета безопасности ООН на период 2027-2028 года. Мы рассматриваем это как высокое доверие мирового сообщества и одновременно как большую ответственность. Кыргызская республика выражает искреннюю благодарность всем государственным участникам ОБСЕ, которые поддержали нашу кандидатуру. Уважаемые коллеги, спасибо большое вам всем. Кыргызская республика подтверждает свою готовность к конструктивному взаимодействию в рамках Парламентской ассамблеи ОБСЕ. Благодарю за внимание.
Thank you. Next, from the United States of America, Dr. Greg Murphy, followed by Judy White from Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The radical Islamic regime of Iran can never be allowed to possess a nuclear weapon. That is not simply an American interest or an Israeli interest, it is a European interest and, in fact, global interest. This is a regime that has spent decades sponsoring bloodthirsty terrorism, destabilizing its neighbors, and brutally repressing and killing its own people. We cannot allow the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism to acquire the world's most dangerous weapon, a weapon that could reach anywhere in Europe, the United States, or any freedom-loving nation in the world. The United States acted to confront this imminent and impending threat, but America could not be the only nation responsible for securing the peace that follows. Europe and our partners around the world have a direct stake in ensuring that Iran never rebuilds its nuclear program. Any diplomatic agreement must permanently deny Iran a path to a nuclear weapon, restore freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, and prevent sanctions relief or unfrozen assets from financing terrorism or proxy warfare. Freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz is a global interest. The free flow of commerce and energy cannot be held hostage by threats from this radical regime. I welcome our European allies' willingness, following a durable and diplomatic settlement, to contribute to a multinational defense maritime mission to clear mines, escort commercial shipping, and keep this vital waterway open. This is what allied burden sharing looks like. Just as we are here banding together to fight Putin's war of aggression against Ukraine, we must band together to fight a regime that would hold the world hostage to a nuclear weapon.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Judy White from Canada, followed by, from Belarus, Mr. Sergei Rachkov.
Honorable colleagues, I'd like to thank the Rapporteur, Mr. Winkler of Germany, for this important report and draft resolution. Indeed, I do share his concern that the security order of the OSCE area and beyond is under exceptional strain, including and because of Russia's illegal war of aggression against Ukraine. As the report correctly indicates, one area where these international tensions are felt most strongly is in the Arctic and the high north. My country, Canada, is one of 8 that sit on the Arctic Council, and I'd like to focus my remarks on the geopolitical tensions in the Arctic and their impacts on Indigenous people. The Ottawa Declaration, which formally established the Arctic Council in 1996, created the category of permanent participant to provide for active participation and full consultation with the Arctic Indigenous representatives. Today, there are actually 6 permanent participants, including organizations that represent the Inuit, the Athabaskan, and the Gwich'in peoples in Canada. Inuit and First Nation peoples in Canada have lived in the Arctic since time immemorial. Today, these Indigenous communities, including in my province of Newfoundland and Labrador, are on the front lines of the changing Arctic. The Arctic is warming at least 3 times faster than the global average. The Inuit Circumpolar Council has observed that climate change threatens the culture and survival of the Inuit peoples. The Arctic Council has long been an essential forum, not only to provide voice to Indigenous peoples in the Arctic, but to allow 8 Arctic states to manage Arctic affairs in the spirit of cooperation with an emphasis on sustainable development. In 2023, a committee of the Senate of Canada released a report entitled Arctic Security Under Threat, Urgent Needs for a Changing Geopolitical and Environmental Landscape. That report stressed the inflection point that Canada and other Arctic nations were facing in the Arctic, with pressing security, economic, social, and environmental challenges. It also warned that Russia's invasion could have lasting consequences for Arctic security and defense, as well as for cooperation about Arctic issues. 3 years later, colleagues, this important report still remains all too relevant. Colleagues, considering the significant heat wave that Europe is experiencing, I know the Arctic might seem very far away, but I assure you that the trends affecting the Arctic, climate change, geopolitical tensions, social and economical challenges will actually continue to shape our future. I support the role of the OSCE and the OSCE EPA as an essential forum for cooperation and dialogue on Arctic security and other issues, and I look forward to our discussions on these topics today. Thank you, Mayor Leo.
Thank you. From Belarus, we have Mr. Sergei Rachkov, followed by Mr. Axel Kassiger from Austria.
Господин председатель, обсуждение вопросов политической и военной безопасности проходит сейчас в период серьезных испытаний для всего региона ОБСЕ. Особую обеспокоенность вызывает продолжающаяся милитаризация европейского пространства. Растут военные расходы, увеличивается интенсивность учений, расширяется военная инфраструктура, усиливается санкционное и политическое противостояние. Все это способствует дальнейшему углублению недоверия и росту военной напряженности. Беларусь последовательно выступает за снижение напряженности и возвращение к профессиональному диалогу по вопросам безопасности. Мы убеждены, что устойчивую безопасность невозможно обеспечить посредством давления, изоляции или игнорирования обеспокоенности других государств. Именно поэтому Минск продолжает выступать за восстановление полноценного обсуждения вопросов контроля над вооружениями, мер доверия и транспарентности. Мы подтверждаем нашу твердую позицию о необходимости скорейшего мирного дипломатического урегулирования конфликта вокруг Украины. Необходимо искать возможности для возобновления контактов между военными экспертами, расширения каналов коммуникаций и предотвращения опасных инцидентов. Мы исходим из того, что любые меры, способствующие уменьшению взаимной подозрительности и предотвращению ошибочных оценок, заслуживают поддержки. Вместе с тем, невозможно игнорировать тот факт, что безопасность в современном мире становится все более взаимосвязанной. Терроризм, экстремизм, незаконный оборот наркотиков, транснациональная преступность, угрозы критической инфраструктуре требуют объединения усилий всех государств, независимо от существующих политических разногласий. К сожалению, именно эти вопросы все чаще отходят на второй план. Мы предлагаем начать использовать ОБСЕ в соответствии с теми задачами, для которых организация и создавалась. Полагаем, что ОБСЕ должна вернуть себе роль площадки для предметного обсуждения реальных многообразных угроз безопасности. Наша организация создавалась как пространство диалога, даже в периоды глубоких политических противоречий. Сегодня эта функция востребована как никогда. Мы твердо убеждены, что будущее европейской безопасности должно основываться на принципах равноправия государств, уважения суверенитета, неделимости безопасности и учета законных интересов всех без исключения. Беларусь готова участвовать в совместном поиске решений, способных содействовать снижению конфронтации, восстановлению доверия и формированию более устойчивой системы безопасности на пространстве ОБСЕ. Спасибо.
Thank you very much. Next is Mr. Axel Kassager, followed by from Austria, followed by from Ireland, Mrs. Margaret Murphy O'Mahony.
Sehr geehrter Herr Vorsitzender, geschätzte Kolleginnen und Kollegen! Wir versammeln uns hier in Den Haag nun bereits über ein halbes Jahrhundert nach der Gründung der KSZE und der Unterzeichnung der Schlussakte von Helsinki im Sommer 1975. Diese Organisation wurde aus der elementaren Erkenntnis herausgeboren, dass Sicherheit nicht durch Waffen allein, sondern durch Dialog, Respekt und den unbedingten Willen zur Konfliktverhütung entsteht. Doch wenn wir uns die Tagesordnung und die hitzigen Debatten dieser Jahrestagung ansehen, müssen wir uns fragen, sind wir diesen Wurzeln noch treu? Aus freiheitlich-patriotischer Sicht lautet die Antwort, wir sind auf dem besten Weg, den eigentlichen Kern dieser Organisation aus den Augen zu verlieren. Erstens, die OSZE ist eine Plattform für Friedensstiftung, keine Rüstungsagentur. Wir müssen den Mut zu echten Friedensinitiativen wiederfinden, statt Konflikte durch reine Militärlogik endlos zu verlängern. Zweitens, wir brauchen Realismus im Haushalt statt sündteurer Parallelstrukturen. Die OSZE leidet unter massiven finanziellen Engpässen. Das Regulärbudget ist drastisch geschrumpft und wir müssen jeden Cent zweimal umdrehen. Dass unter diesen Umständen, wie im Resolutionstext von Kollegin Rouane gefordert, ein neuer ständiger OSZE-Mechanismus für Gaza und eine einseitige Anerkennung palästinensischer Gebiete eingefordert wird, überschreitet das Mandat der OSZE deutlich. Es ist verantwortungslos, kostspielige Überwachungsbürokratien für den Nahen Osten aufzubauen, während uns hier in Europa das Geld für unsere eigenen drängenden Aufgaben fehlt. Drittens, der Fokus muss auf echter Sicherheit statt auf ideologischen Experimenten liegen. Die Bürger Europas werden täglich durch illegale Massenmigration, importierten Extremismus und grenzüberschreitende Kriminalität bedroht. Doch anstatt diese reale Unsicherheit zu bekämpfen, investiert diese Organisation ihre Energie lieber in ideologische Agenten. Seien es die ausufernden Forderungen des Berichts zu weitreichenden Genderpolitiken unter dem Deckmantel der Inklusion oder realitätsfremde Debatten zur sogenannten Klimamigration. Wir lehnen diese Zweckentfremdung der OSZE ab. Niemand in Europa ist geholfen, wenn wir uns in radikalen linken Mainstreaming verlieren, während unsere europäischen Außengrenzen weiterhin sperrangelweit offen stehen. Geschätzte Kolleginnen und Kollegen, die Bürger erwarten von uns Friedensstiftung, Vernunft und echten Grenzschutz, keine bürokratische Nabelschau. Lassen Sie uns die historische Mission von 1975 wiederbeleben. Wir brauchen pragmatischen Mut, den Schutz unserer eigenen Länder und den unbedingten Willen zur Verhandlungslösung. Vielen Dank für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit.
Thank you. The next person we will hear from will be from Ireland, Ms. Margaret Murphy O'Mahony, followed by Ms. Gerashenko from Ukraine.
Gurv Mahagus Kahirluk Tom on Broduleve Ansha Maden Mar Hanador in a fall. Chairman, I am deeply alarmed by the reported continued abduction and deportation of many of Ukrainian children. These reports describe children being forcibly transferred from their homes and their communities, separated from their families and subjected to processes intended to erase their identity, their language and their cultural heritage. If confirmed, such acts constitute grave violations of international law and represent an unacceptable assault on the rights and dignity of children. Children must never become instruments of war. International humanitarian law and international human rights law provide clear protections against the unlawful transfer, deportation and forced assimilation of children. Those responsible for such violations must be held accountable, and every effort must be made to ensure that affected children can be safely identified, be located, and be reunited with their families whenever possible. We call on all parties to fully respect their obligations under international law and to cooperate with independent international mechanisms investigating these allegations. We also support continued effort by humanitarian organizations to trace missing children, to facilitate family reunification, and to provide the care and protection these children so urgently need. The international community cannot allow these reports to fade into the background. Every child has a right to family, a right to identity, a right to safety, and a future free from the trauma of conflict. We must remain steadfast in demanding accountability, supporting victims, and working towards the safe return of every unlawfully displaced child. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to hear from Ms. Gerashenko from Ukraine, followed by Mr. Fatmir Admidou from Albania.
Dear court, Ukraine strongly supports this resolution. Lasting peace in the OSCE region cannot be built on impunity, occupation, or the forced silence of victims. It must be built on international law. Russia's war against Ukraine is not a crisis. It is not a conflict between two sides. It is a war of aggression initiated by the Russian Federation against sovereign states. And for such crimes, there must be individual responsibility. Justice must prevail. Ukraine calls on all OSCE participating states to support the Special Tribunal for the crimes of aggression against Ukraine and to ensure that leadership crimes are prosecuted. According to UN Human Rights Monitoring, in May alone, at least 274 civilians were killed and 1,800 were injured in Ukraine, the highest monthly civilian casualty toll in 4 years. And I think on June, the situation was even worse. UNICEF has reported that at least 3,500 children have been killed or injured since February 2022. And the trend is getting worse, not better. Russia is increasing its use of missiles, ballistic weapons, drones, and guided bombs against cities. Kyiv, Kharkiv, Dnipro, Odessa, Sumy, Zaporizhzhia, Chernihiv, Kherson. They are not military abstraction. They are homes, schools, hospitals, railway station, energy facility, and culture heritage sites. In recent weeks, Kyiv has again been hit by large-scale missiles and drones attacks. The Kyiv-Pecherska Lavra, one of the most important religion and culture sites in Ukraine and part of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, was damaged. It is an attack on Ukraine's identity and on European culture heritage. That is why Ukraine needs more air defense system, not as a political symbols, but as a practical means to save lives. Sanctions must also become more systematic and harder to evade. We welcome signal on the next EU sanctions package, including stronger restriction on those directly cannot to Russia's war machine. Visa restrictions should apply not only to officials and commanders, but also to the relatives and beneficiaries of those already sanctions. Ukraine wants peace. But peace must be just and lasting. Ukraine's red lines are clear. No recognition of occupied territories as Russia, no limits on Ukraine's sovereignty, defense capability, or right to choose alliance, no decision about Ukraine without Ukraine. The OSCE was creator to protect principles that Russia is how try to destroy sovereignty, territorial integrity, human rights, and the non-use of force. This is why this resolution matters, and for Ukraine, for Europe, and for the future of the OSCE security order, justice must prevail. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Tobias.
Thank you. The next speaker that you will hear from is Mr. Thadmir Medu from Albania, followed by Ms. Marlene Gill from Canada.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your great work, and you'll be greatly missed in this OSCE. And I just want first to echo with Congressman Murphy on 2 points. First about Iran and second about Russia, and also the need for US and Europeans to work together in partnership. That's very important. But me add another point which is of great concern, and we rarely speak about it, which is about the CCP, the China. And because mostly in the OSCE territory, they do converge in their policies about, malign influence toward our stability of our region. So we should pay a little bit more attention to see it a little bit more in complex how we can face this situation. And Mr. Tobias, I really thank you very much for a very detailed resolution, but also want to bring your attention about the Balkans. So President of the United States approved the National Defense Authorization Act, which was approved by the Congress of the United States, raised the concerns about malign influence of China and Russia in the Balkans, and also raised the concerns about the organized crime and corruption. And I'm telling you that, we have a lot of governments in the Balkans which are backsliding toward, autocracy, toward corruption and strongman government. And I would just go to my country, Albania. Albania is, as I said, backsliding, marked by state capture, widespread corruption, criminal influence, concentration of power, weakening of the rule of law, lawfare against the opposition. And that's the reality. And the beauty of what is happening nowadays for 30 days in a row, and it's great that Albanian people are standing against the arrogance of the government, are standing against corruption, asking for resignation of the prime minister, trying to, make the political class more accountable to the people and serve to the people, all politicians from all sides. And that's, really a beauty when you see that kind of energy for 35 days in a row, standing strongly against corruption and asking for the government for the people. So once more, I think it's very important why we'll pay a lot of attention about what's going on in other areas. The Balkans always have been a kind of volatile region, and also a lot under influence of Russia and other influences as well. So if I will appreciate next time you have the report, to have a little bit more thorough discussion and also evaluation of the situation in the Balkans. And at OSCE, we stand for respect of human rights, free and fair elections. And just read the report of ODIHR about Albania. Unification of state and the party in power. Voter intimidation, organized crime involved in the rigging the elections. And that's, I think, needs a strong call from OSCE and your countries regarding what's going on in our part of the world. It's not just about European integration. It's about the reality of Europe in our countries. So I want to thank you for the resolution, thank the chairman once more for a great job you have done, and hope to see you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Ms. Marlene Gill from Canada, followed by Mr. Igor Shiryak from Moldova.
Chers collègues, je voudrais remercier le rapporteur de cette commission, Tobias Winkler, pour son excellent travail et la qualité de son rapport. Je suis députée d'une circonscription située au nord du Québec et en lisant le rapport de cette commission générale, j'ai été heureuse de constater que celui-ci accorde une place aux questions qui touchent au Grand Nord et à l'Arctique. Le rapport mentionne qu'une série d'éléments, les changements climatiques, les nouvelles routes maritimes, l'intérêt grandissant pour les ressources naturelles et l'intensification de la concurrence géopolitique font de la région un espace stratégique de premier plan. En effet, même si des conflits au Moyen-Orient et dans le Golfe Persique ont focalisé l'attention ces derniers mois, il est important que notre Assemblée ne perde pas de vue les questions stratégiques qui touchent à la région circumpolaire et place les populations locales au cœur de ces réflexions. Comme il est justement mentionné dans le rapport, l'Arctique doit demeurer, et je cite, « une région où règne la coopération, le respect du droit international, la protection de l'environnement et le dialogue entre les différentes parties prenantes, y compris les populations autochtones ». Fin de la citation. La réponse aux enjeux qui émergent dans le Grand Nord et dans l'Arctique ne peut simplement pas être la compétition entre grandes puissances et le retour à des relations internationales basées sur la menace ou l'usage de la force. Au contraire, les tensions dans ces régions fournissent une illustration unique de la pertinence du concept de sécurité globale qui est au cœur de l'OSCE et du travail de notre Assemblée. Même si je parle aujourd'hui dans le cadre de la première commission générale, qui se concentre sur les aspects politiques et de sécurité, il est clair que les enjeux qui concernent le Grand Nord et l'Arctique ne peuvent être simplement compris comme des enjeux sécuritaires ou stratégiques. Les ressources naturelles et les minéraux critiques, l'ouverture de routes maritimes, le développement des infrastructures, les bouleversements entraînés par les changements climatiques sont autant de thèmes liés à la dimension économico-environnementale de la sécurité. Et enfin, la troisième dimension du concept de sécurité globale, la dimension humaine, doit nous amener à considérer les droits des populations locales, qui sont pour une grande partie des populations autochtones, et leurs conditions de vie. La jeunesse, l'éducation, la protection de l'héritage culturel et linguistique, la santé, le logement sont des enjeux cruciaux à cet égard. Plus tôt cette année, lors de notre réunion d'hiver à Vienne, j'ai pris la parole pour rappeler qu'il est essentiel de placer les populations locales au cœur des politiques liées au Nord. Plus que jamais, ces populations sont un trait d'union entre les différents enjeux liés au Grand Nord et à l'Arctique. Leur pleine participation dans les processus de prise de décision qui les concerne doit être un principe qui guide notre action. Notre Assemblée couvre une région qui encercle tout l'Arctique. Elle constitue ainsi un espace de discussion crucial pour traiter de ces enjeux. Merci.
Next speaker is going to be Mr. Igor Shriak from Moldova.
Mr. Chair, dear colleagues, this year marks 50 years since the Helsinki Final Act. Unfortunately, instead of celebrating its principles, we are defending them again, the most serious challenges in decade. Russian war against Ukraine is not only an attack on one sovereign nation, it is an attack on the entire European security architecture built on international law, sovereignty and the inviolability of border. For the Republic of Moldova is not a theoretical debate. We experienced Russian aggressions already in 1992. Hundreds of Moldovans lost their lives, and part of the territory remained under illegal Russian military presence to this today. The forced transfer and deportation of Ukrainian children is one of the most tragic consequences of Russia's war of aggressions against Ukraine. These children have been separated from their families, deprived of their identity, and denied their fundamental rights. This is not only a humanitarian tragedy, it is a serious violation of international humanitarian law, international human rights law, and the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment on the Crime and Genocide. The Parliament of the Republic of Moldova has taken a clear position on these issues. On 30 May 2024, our Parliament adopted a declaration strongly condemned Russia's policy of forces displacement, deportation, and illegal adoption of Ukrainian children. The declaration calls these actions unacceptable and urges the international community to intensify effort to identify, locate, and safely return every abducted child to Ukraine. No child should become a victim of war or lose their identity because of armed aggression. The safe return to every Ukrainian child must remain a priority for the international community. The Republic of Moldova will continue to stand in solidarity with Ukraine, support international effort, and uphold international law and the right of every child. I would also like to express our gratitude to our Romanian colleagues, Mr. Costel Dunava, for highlighting the human rights violation committed by the so-called Transnistrian Authority. In this context, I would like to recall a supplementary item on the Declaration on the Human Rights Situation in the Transnistria region of the Republic of Moldova, adopted during the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly annual session held in Bucharest in 2024, which was jointly submitted by the Moldovan and Romanian delegation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dear committee members, I want to let you know that we are actually at the 10:30 time for us to conclude our meeting for today. There are a few more speakers on the list who will be called tomorrow when we continue our debate, followed by consideration of amendments. I want to thank you and say that before we conclude, I want to remind committee members that we also have the pleasure of receiving an address by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands, Tom Bertensen, during our first meeting on Monday, July the 6th. That'll be Monday, July the 6th. We will continue tomorrow our debate of consideration of the amendments to the draft resolution. That time is going to be at 11 a.m. So that will be at 11 a.m. This meeting is now closed.